You set foot on foreign soil. Only this land isn't ruled by any country or government. In this land we celebrate music. In this land we celebrate games. In this land we celebrate those who compose video game music. Welcome to the VG Embassy. Welcome and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the VG Embassy. This is a show centered around video game music and the amazing online community of fans and podcasters that enjoy it. My name's Ed, and on each episode I'll take the role of Prime VGM Minister and invite a guest VG Ambassador onto the show to share with us their own video game music culture. Or I may share a part of my culture on a solo show. Boys and girls, this is episode 53. I am recording solo mid-quarantine. As of this recording, we are about 3 weeks into shelter in place in my section of the United States. And so the last 2 episodes I recorded were done before this whole COVID-19 situation started taking place. I actually recorded those in reverse order. So the Pico 8 show with the diet had already been recorded by the time that Dan and I did our little, I don't know what you would call it, the new and improved April Fool's episode. It came out a couple days before April Fool's, but I hope that people kind of pieced it together and saw that that was kind of a goof. People love that show. I got so much awesome feedback. Dan and I were just over the moon with how much you guys enjoyed it. So hopefully in the future we'll do some more scripted stuff. Me and Dan or me and some other people. It was a lot of work, and once it was finally edited and put together, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders, but the amount of love we got back from that show made every minute of it worthwhile. So I appreciate that, and I hope that I can do more stuff to entertain you guys as we go throughout the VG Embassy's lifespan, which hopefully will be very long. So, today I'm recording by myself. I've been by myself for quite a while, just me and my family hanging out because everything is closed. And fortunately, to stave off some of my boredom, I was alerted by a retro gaming website to a new device released for the Neo-Geo CD console, and it's a device made by a developer named Furtek, and he created a SD card adapter for the Neo-Geo CD. Basically, it lets you remove the CD reader from the Neo-Geo CD, put a bunch of game ISO images onto the SD card, and when you boot up the Neo-Geo CD, it replaces the BIOS, and you've got a full menu of games that you can look through and launch them with SD card speeds instead of CD read speeds. And we'll talk a little bit about why that is so significant as we get into more of the details about the system itself. But I was amazed at how much it improved the playability of the system, and so I've been checking out a lot of really cool games for it. I realized just how many games have rearranged music from the original Neo Geo tunes. And I also realized that, at least from the video game music podcasts that I'm aware of and that I listen to, not many people focus on Neo Geo CD music at all, or Neo Geo music in general, unless they're doing like a generic fighting game episode or something. So I wanted to really, this is really like a part of my culture because I love these weird esoteric video game systems, the Jaguar, the 3DO, Neo Geo CD, stuff that just kind of like came out and faded away and not many people really remember them fondly. So this is a really cool opportunity for me to share some of the expertise that I've kind of gained over the years. I have two Neo-Geo CD units. I have a top-loading one and I have a front-loading one. I'm, to be honest, not 100% sure how I ended up with them. I worked at two different video game stores growing up, and my brother also worked at the same Funcoland I did, but many years later. One of his best friends from school ended up being the manager of that store, so they used to get weird trade-ins, and my brother would come home with weird stuff, I would come home with weird stuff, and we just had this huge collection of really weird stuff from the video game world, and we kind of split it up when we moved out of the house, and I got most of the really bizarre stuff. So this just happens to be it, and when I saw this device on Vertex's website, I was like, yeah, this is something I want to do. I want to install this in one of my systems, and I just want to check it out, and I just felt it was something really cool to play with. So it happened at just the right time where I was at home, quarantined, bored out of my skull, got it in the mail, soldered it into my top-loading Neo-Geo CD, and after a few little bumps and bruises with getting the games formatted correctly, I'm having a blast. I'm playing a ton of Neo-Geo CD games and really enjoying the music. So, that being said, since the Neo-Geo music is not even featured that much on these podcasts, and the Neo-Geo CD music even less so, I'm going to take a page from the Pixel Tunes Radio Same Song, Different System episodes, and so we're going to play some music from some cool Neo-Geo CD games that I've been playing lately, and I'm going to play the original version from the cartridge game first, and then we'll compare it to the arrangement on the Neo-Geo CD. You're going to see a notable absence of fighting games on this. Even though Neo Geo was mostly famous for fighting games, that's almost kind of why I wanted to stay away from it, because like King of Fighters and all that stuff, Fatal Fury, the arranged soundtracks for those games came out on retail CDs. If you've played like the Dreamcast or the PlayStation or the PS2 versions of those games, you've heard the arranged versions that were already on the Neo Geo CD. So I wanted to play as much music as I could that was really exclusive to the Neo Geo CD games that you couldn't find in any other titles or retail music releases or anything like that. So we got a bunch of cool music here, and I hope you guys really enjoy it. Before we get into the music, a little bit, just so you can appreciate the console that we're talking about. The original Neo Geo released for between $600 and $700, depending on the region, and the games for it were $200 and up to $500 for one game. So SNK, who developed the Neo Geo, decided that they wanted to make a lower cost, lower budget version and take advantage of CD media to put their games on it, and developed this Neo Geo CD system, put out a bunch of their games on CD, and people hated it. And I'll tell you why they hated it, because for some reason they decided that going with a 1X CD-ROM drive was a smart move. Neo Geo games are enormous, and so now this system has to load large chunks of data into it at 1x speed. We're looking at load times of 30 to 60 seconds in between fighting matches on King of Fighters, or 45 seconds to load up one level of Metal Slug. And then that's probably only half a level. Sometimes if it switches scenes in the middle of a level, it's got to load another 45 to 50 seconds. It really takes you out of the game. It just is not fun at all. So people didn't enjoy the system very much. A lot of the games that were released later on in the Neo Geo's life wouldn't even fit on a CD, so they didn't even release those. So the library was kind of hit and miss. The load times were abysmal. They did release a Neo Geo CD-Z unit only in Japan, and that had a 2X CD-ROM unit in it, which shortened load times down to about 15 seconds, which is still kind of long, but better. It wasn't great. And so this SD card adapter shortens load times significantly. We're talking 4 to 5 second load times instead. It feels like you're playing maybe like a PlayStation game or a Saturn game with like if you ported a Neo-Geo game to a Saturn or a PlayStation, levels load very quickly, keeps you in the game. You hardly even realize that it's loading because you're just kind of going along with the flow. Makes it feel like a whole different console. So I really appreciate that, and I hope that you guys appreciate a lot of this music that we're going to be playing. So I've talked enough. Let's start getting into some music. First game of the day is Top Hunter, Roddy and Cathy. This came out in 1994 on both cart and CD. This is the final stage theme, composed by Yoko Osaka, Yoshihiko Kitamura, Shiba Poo, which is an alias, Akihiro Uchida, Masahiko Hataya, and Toshio Shimizu. Alright, that was the original version of the final stage theme from Top Hunter, Roddy and Cathy for the Neo Geo. Let's take a listen to the arranged version from Top Hunter, Roddy and Cathy for the Neo Geo CD. Alright, we're back. That was the CD arrangement of Top Hunter, Roddy and Cathy's final stage theme, and that was composed by Yoko Osaka, Yoshihiko Kitamura, Shiba Poo, Akira Uchida, Masahiko Hataya, and Toshio Shimizu. Fun track. For a final stage, this feels really heroic. It almost feels more like a level 1 track or something. I mean, it starts off kind of maybe kind of dark with that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, but then really rolls into this nice little heroic melody. It's one of the catchiest tunes in the whole game, which is really weird that they pushed it all the way to the end of the game. I'm not sure how many gamers actually got to the last level. It's not that difficult of a game, but as far as comparisons between the two, I mean, it's obviously the same song, and I feel like for a lot of these Neo-Geo CD games, what we might be seeing are the original reference songs written by the composers that were then converted into chiptune for the Neo-Geo kart system. The Neo-Geo kart system had a YM2610B in it, which had, and I'm just going off the top of my head here, 4 FM channels with 4 operators each. It had 4 Super Nintendo style sample wave out channels, which were low quality, and then it had 1 super high quality channel which could play audio up to like 55 kilohertz, so like CD quality streaming audio. And then it also had 1 like programmable noise channel. If I got that wrong, correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's right. It was a very powerful chip. Not many people use the FM that much, so I feel like you hear mostly those sample channels, and it's interesting how they do it here. I like the fact that on the CD version, those orchestra hits are so much more clear, but I like on the kart version that the drums and the percussion are a little more crunchy and a little more thick. They feel very kind of thin and less powerful on the CD arrangement. Also, the CD arrangement has really powerful bass. I don't know how much is going to come through in the down conversion to MP3 for this podcast, but it really hits my subwoofer when I'm playing it directly off the CD on my computer audio. So that's really cool. It's just not a tone as low as lower quality sample channels in the chip can accomplish. The game itself, super interesting. It's a side-scrolling action game. It's got 2 planes. So similar to like Guardian Heroes on the Saturn, where you can jump into the background and then jump into the foreground, this game kind of does the same thing. So you're punching enemies, and then you see enemies in the background, and you hit a button and you jump into the background and you punch the enemies there. And sometimes there's an obstacle in the foreground and you have to jump into the background to go behind it, or vice versa. There's an obstacle in the background, you have to jump into the foreground. It makes for an interesting combination of movements that you have to do to get through the game, so there's a little bit of a gimmick there. It's also a 2-player simultaneous game, so you can have, 1 person concentrate on the background stuff and 1 on the foreground, and, hop to the same plane whenever there's an obstacle that you can't get past. You've got really long arms, so you can grab upward and lift yourself up to higher planes, or grab rings and pull them down to have like rocks fall on enemies' heads. There are vehicles that you can jump into. A lot of people refer to this as like a predecessor to Metal Slug, because a lot of the vehicles feel kind of like the Metal Slug tanks and the vehicles that you could take control of in the Metal Slug series. It's got some really giant bosses. It's simple. I mean, it's one of the earlier Neo Geo games, but it's fun, and it's a game that not a lot of people talk about. And I feel like I've only played it single player, but I feel like if you got together with a friend and tried to get through this game together, you would have a blast. The CD version is very playable. I mean, it's got long load times, of course, and it just loads in between each stage. The stages are pretty long, so you're not looking at those loading screens too much. On the SD card adapter version, it flies through the loading screens pretty quickly, so you don't really get that much of an issue there. So the main composers on this soundtrack were Masahiko Hataya, aka Papaya, and Toshio Shimizu, otherwise known as Shimizu. Masahiko Hataya was an SNK employee, wrote music for a ton of Neo Geo games. Samurai Showdown, 3 Count Bout, King of Fighters, he did 94, 95, 96, Fatal Fury 3, Art of Fighting, Ghost Pilots, The Super Spy, the list goes on and on and on. He stopped working in game audio, it seems, around 2008. He did some work on Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games, both the 2007 and the 2008 iterations, and then was last credited on Dragon Ball Z Burst Limit. So, a long and storied career, starting way back in 1989. Toshio Shimizu worked with Hataya quite a bit, so they worked on the Art of Fighting series, the Fatal Fury series, King of Fighters 96, Real Bout Fatal Fury Special. He did mostly fighting games. He also wrote and arranged the soundtrack for Last Resort, which is one of my favorite Neo-Geo shoot-em-ups, and just by coincidence, that's what we're going to listen to next. So let's hear The Melting Point, Stage 4 from Last Resort. This came out on cartridge in 1992 and CD in 1994. Of course, we'll start off with the cartridge version. This was also co-composed by Yasuo Yamate. Alright, that was the cartridge version of The Melting Point, Stage 4 from Last Resort. Let's take a listen to the CD arrangement. And this is more of a remix than an arrangement. Most of the places I see on the internet refer to all of the soundtrack entries on the CD version as the Neo-Geo CD remix. So let's see just how different it is. That was The Melting Point, Stage 4 from Last Resort for the Neo-Geo CD, released in 1994. Previously, we heard from the cartridge original version, released in 1992. And I think the difference in years on those releases had a lot to do with why these two songs sound so differently from each other. I also want to preface this by saying, for the most part, song arrangements, the credits for the arrangements, are extremely difficult to come by. And for the most part, I also think that the original composers arranged their own music, or like I said before, they were the original reference music pieces that the composers came up with before they converted it to the Neo-Geo sound chip. So, this being said, I think this coming out 2 years later, I think it's why the music on the CD version of the game feels so different from the cartridge version. I mean, you can tell these two songs are the same, but the cart version sounds so much darker and heavier, where the CD version just sounds a lot brighter. They both sound really 80s, and they both sound really kind of like UK new wave, almost a little bit goth 80s, like Sisters of Mercy, maybe like really early Cure, that kind of a sound. I especially like the really bright acoustic guitar sounds on the CD version. I feel like the CD version is what the composers were envisioning when they were programming the cart version, you know, and they were able to really kind of make that vision clear on the CD version. Overall, though, I mean, both are great songs. They have some really nice synth sounds. I really like towards the end where those kind of synth violins come in. They're very warm and very textured and really kind of fill out the very percussive, heavy, like first 2/3 of the song. And I do, while I'm playing this game, really do notice when that part comes in. It just makes the game feel very, very different. So we talked a little bit about Toshio Shimizu. Yasuo Yamate, another longtime SNK composer, also went by the name Tate Norio. And for the most part, lots of Neo Geo stuff. Started off with Cyberlip in 1990. Fatal Fury series, Samurai Showdown series, Kazuna Encounter. As time went on, he was a sound designer on Okami in 2006, went back to SNK for a little while, did King of Fighters 12, and King of Fighters 98 Ultimate Match, which was kind of like a revamp of KOF 98 for PC and some of the more modern console systems. I was one of the composers on Half Minute Hero and Half Minute Hero The Second Coming, and was a sound designer on Sword Art Online Fatal Bullet in 2018. So he's still in the business, doing stuff. Huge amount of soundtracks to his name, so very experienced composer. And you can tell, I mean, this was his fourth credited soundtrack, at least that I could find, 2 years after he got into the business, and this is great music. The Last Resort soundtrack is very underrated, very worth listening to. The game itself is hard as nails. So SNK brought on a lot of IREM's developers when IREM started going kind of belly up for a little while, and then they had a resurgence, but a lot of the guys that worked on R-Type ended up working for SNK, and so this game feels like R-Type. You've got a very kind of rounded ship with this option, kind of a swirly thing that attaches to the front, or you can shoot it out and it'll kind of heat seek enemies. It'll have different weapons depending on the power-ups that you pick up, and when you detach it from your ship, it changes its weapon, very much like what R-Type is. So if you enjoy those kind of R-Type games, you'll definitely enjoy this one. Just like R-Type, it is a memorization shmup. You need to know where to be at what time, because enemies will block you in, close you out, indestructible objects will get in your face, and unless you know whether to go up or down, you're dead. So, or you've got a 50-50 shot of making it through. So it's reflex based, but you also need to play this game over and over again to really kind of learn it and be able to beat it. Taking a page from Ghouls and Ghosts, you also need to beat this game twice to see the real ending. I have not gotten close to that. I've gotten to maybe stage 3 or 4. It's a great looking game. It's very impressive. It has this very kind of Neo-Tokyo atmosphere, and if you look at the Hardcore Gaming 101 page for Last Resort, it will show you background images of a cityscape and a crater that were lifted directly from the movie Akira. So they wanted to kind of have that post-apocalyptic city rebuilding itself, Neo-Tokyo atmosphere in their game, and I think it worked really well. There's a lot of, again, really big bosses. The Neo Geo could push around huge amounts of sprites. It had a Motorola 68000 processor that ran at 12 megahertz. It was like unbelievably fast for its time, and so there's virtually no slowdown anywhere. I think it could support up to 386 sprites on the screen at once. Like, holy cow. So there are enemies coming at you, shooting bullets. You've got your ship with its swirly little option thing. There are cars driving on the street below you. There are planes flying in the sky above you. There's different levels of parallax. There's so much going on the screen, and the Neo Geo can just handle it no problem. The Super Nintendo would probably choke and start to burn up in its cabinet if you tried to put a game like that on the SNES, which is one of the reasons why the Neo Geo was so cool. So, Last Resort, fun game, one of the lower priced carts out there. I think you can get it for like maybe $300. Yes, that's lower priced. The CD version, probably a little less expensive, probably around $30 or $40. The cool thing about the Neo Geo CD is it was made before CD copy protection existed, so you can easily download images just like you can for the Sega CD, burn a copy of the game, throw it in your Neo Geo CD, and play it like no problem. Of course, there's something to be said about having the original games, and I do have a bunch of original Neo Geo CD games, but for the ones that are very, very hard to find, released in Japan only, you can definitely try out CD games. I mean, that's if you have a Neo Geo CD. And as far as I know, I think I'm the only person I know that has one. So I might just be talking to nobody right now. Anyways, let's move on to one of my absolute favorite video games of all time. Never mind Neo Geo games of all time. We're going to listen to Just Play Baseball Stars 2 from the game Baseball Stars 2. This came out, again, just like Last Resort, on cartridge in 1992 and CD in 1994, composed by Papaya himself, Masahiko Hataya, and Kazuhiro Nishida. We'll start off with the cartridge version first. Alright, so that was the cart version of Just Play Baseball Stars 2 from the game Baseball Stars 2, released in 1992 on the Neo Geo. I guess you're probably wondering how this will sound as an arranged version. Believe it or not, the arranged version uses live instrumentation. This doesn't really sound like a song that can work with live instrumentation, but it does. So let's take a listen. Alright, see, I told you it worked. That was the CD version of Just Play Baseball Stars 2 from the game Baseball Stars 2, released on the Neo-Geo CD in 1994. Both tracks composed by Masahiko Hataya and Kazuhiro Nishida. I feel like the CD version had a little more going on. There was that really nice keyboard solo, and the instrumentation that they chose for this was just spot on. Very nice guitar tones. I really like that kind of funk, plucky bass underneath that breakdown with those really weird vocal samples. I don't know, they were just kind of Tim Allen style grunts or something. But I don't know, I could listen to this one over and over and over again. It's really hard for me to pick like a preferred version versus, cart or CD, because I really, really, really like the live instrumentation of the CD version. But the cart version has so much nostalgia for me. It's not even funny. So I don't know. I'll leave it up to you guys. What do you think? Which was your favorite version? I love this game, like I said, and I remember this game was in a bowling alley that was in a shopping plaza that was right next to my high school. So after school on some days, a bunch of friends and me would walk over to the bowling alley, hit the arcade that was in there, and play some of the games. And the volume was way up on the Neo Geo cabinet. And, I think it had Samurai Showdown, Magician Lord, Baseball Stars 2, and I think Fatal Fury were the 4 games that were in that one. And I remember playing Baseball Stars 2 and hearing all the vocal samples in the music and being really impressed by it for some reason. I guess just because it was really clear. That's obviously that more capable sample channel that is humming along with those vocal samples in the song there. Which, by the way, I did look up the actual specs for the YM2610, and instead of 4 sample channels, like I originally mentioned, it actually has 6, and then it's also got 3 PSG channels as well, so even more capable than I originally made it out to be. But I was very close on all the other stuff, so you gotta give me some credit there. But getting back to Baseball Stars 2, I think this is one of the best baseball games ever made. It is so much fun. Even if you don't like baseball, they kind of turn it into some sort of animal that it isn't supposed to be. And the characters are big and well drawn, and they have this kind of fury and animalistic quality about them. They just kind of rage out, and you can tell they really want to do their best at playing this baseball game. The animation on the pitcher is awesome. You see giant animated shots of their faces as they're batting and as they're hitting. When the ball is a pop fly out to the field, the sprite of the ball gets absolutely huge. It takes up almost the entire screen as it flies into the outfield and then gradually drops down. And you can also see the players might jump up towards the screen to get it. There's a lot of really cool stuff going on. It's very, very easy to play. There are some kind of arcadey style power moves, so you can assign a power bat to a batter that is either in a clutch position or might not have the greatest batting record to hope to get a little bit more power. And I don't know, it's just so much fun to play. It's set up like an arcade kind of game, so I think you put in however many quarters, 50 cents or 25 cents, whatever the arcade operator decides, and you get 3 innings, and then you can feed more quarters in to get 3 more innings and 3 more innings. So you put, a total of 3 sessions of quarters in to play an entire 9-inning game against either the computer or against another player. Yeah, I can't recommend this game enough. It got released everywhere. That's a testament to how good it was. It came out on, I think, all computer systems, so you can get it on Steam for Linux, Mac, and Windows. You get the Neo-Geo version, the Neo-Geo CD version. It was released on the Switch as part of their ACA Neo-Geo collection. PS3, PS4, on the PSP. It was on the Virtual Console on the Wii, and Xbox One as well. So, yeah, really popular game. Did really well for SNK and the Neo-Geo brand. And I don't know, I've played a lot of arcade-style baseball games since and before this, and nothing has really matched the quality. Even last summer when I got it on the Switch, I would, after work, when it was pleasant outside, sit on my front porch with my Switch and went through an entire single-player season of Baseball Stars 2. It was just a joy to play, and it was nice kind of being outside and playing through the game and hearing "Let's play Baseball Stars 2" over and over again out of the Switch speakers. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy, but I am, so I guess that makes sense. So enough about baseball. Let's move on to a different sport entirely. We're going to talk about basketball. And fans of the VGM podcast, Volt Supreme's Synth VGM Dream Stream Machine, might recognize this game from a recent episode he did on hip-hop VGM with his pal Donnie Smalls. And so this is a different selection from a game which goes by many names. In Europe, it was Street Hoop. In North America, it was Street Slam. And in Japan, it was called Dunk Dream. This was released on Cart in 1994 and CD in 1995. We're going to listen to a song called Yo, What's Up? The Slam Court theme, composed by Tatsuya Kiyuchi, going under the pseudonym Mr. K Dynamite, Masaki Iwasaki as Korimasa, with lyrics by Steve Miller. Let's listen to the Cart version first. Pretty slick. That was the Cart version of Yo, What's Up? Slam Court theme from Street Hoop / Street Slam / Dunk Dream, depending on your region. Composed by Tatsuya Kiyuchi and Masaki Iwasaki with lyrics by Steve Miller. A nice, gritty, very kind of traditional hip-hop jam. A lot of fun, basketball lyrics. Can't really say anything bad about it. The CD version cleans it up a little bit. It's pretty much the same song, but I think they do a little bit different arrangements with the stereo effects and some of the instrumentals. So let's take a listen to that, and we'll see what's up with it.
ain't no referee in this sport. Tip it off and you're bumping down the half court. Taking long shots, shooting for the 3 score. Pump it up. No out of bounds gonna stop me. Shattering backboards and looking at a mean. Playing all day, man, you never see me lose. I only break down wearing our new shoes.
Alright, that was the CD version of Yo, What's Up? Slam Court theme from Street Hoop / Street Slam / Dunk Dream. We're just going to call it Street Slam because that's what it was in the United States, so that's what I'm familiar with. Released on cartridge in 1994 and 1 year later on CD in 1995, composed by Tatsuya Kiuchi and Masaki Iwasaki, both of which were part of the Bad Dudes team of composers. Yes, Street Slam was a Data East developed game, one of the few Data East games that were released on the Neo-Geo. And of course, lyrics by Steve Miller. There are so many Steve Millers out there, it was really difficult to figure out if Steve Miller had worked on any other games. I couldn't really find any other credits. The arrangement for the CD version was credited to Gamadelic, which was Data East's in-house band, similar to Zontata or the Konami Kukeha Club, etc., etc. Both Tatsuya Kiuchi and Masaki Iwasaki were members of Gamadelic, so I'm pretty sure that they just arranged their own stuff, cleaned it up, re-recorded it possibly for the CD version. Because the song is extremely similar. There are, like I said, a few changes with where things are kind of panned stereo-wise. The bass line here is a little more rounded, I guess, a little more cartoony sounding in a sense. The lyrics are, I believe, the same take. It was just kind of digitized and crunched down for the cart version, but you're hearing the kind of lossless original quality recording on the CD version, which is cool. Mr. Volt Supreme, if you're listening, I know you were a big fan of the cartridge version of the soundtrack, so I don't even know if you knew that a full quality CD version exists, so this might be something you can share in a future episode of your show, which would be cool. As far as the game goes, okay, so it's like NBA Jam for the most part. It's 3-on-3 instead of 2-on-2. It's more obviously sprite based instead of like digitized photography like NBA Jam. It's not as extreme as NBA Jam. It feels good. The game isn't anything to write home about. You know, you can really easily just run down the court, do a slam dunk. The matches are very, very quick. You can do, 2-3 minute halves and be done with the game in like literally 6 minutes. But it's fun. I guess if you only had a Neo Geo at home and you wanted a basketball game, this would be it. I don't think there are any other basketball games on the Neo Geo, so you would pretty much be stuck with this one, but you can't really go wrong with it. You've got a whole bunch of different teams to choose from. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. There aren't really any individual player stats. I think they all just behave differently in groups of their teams based on what their stats are. There's a bunch of different courts you can play on. Each court has its own kind of theme song. You can go through a little tournament if you want to. For a 2-player game, I think this would be a lot of fun. It's really easy just to switch your characters, and I think it only uses 2 buttons, the A and the B button, out of the 4 buttons that are on the normal Neo Geo controller, and just have some fun with it. I don't really have too much else to say about it. I really do like the fact that they used a nice hip-hop soundtrack. It really fits very well with the aesthetic. The game itself is just very cityscapes with graffiti everywhere. It's a very colorful version of like inner city basketball courts and stuff. So fun to look at, fun to play. I recommend it. It works really well for a CD based system too, because It just only needs to load once to load up the full game, and then you can pretty much play the whole game before it needs to load anything else again, because you're not going through different scenes and stuff like that. So even when you're playing off a regular CD, the loading times, I mean, they're a little bit long at the beginning, but you get a lot of gameplay in between loading segments. So this is the kind of situation where it works a heck of a lot better. All right, moving on to a game that is a little unique in terms of its release. This is a shoot 'em up called Ironclad, or in Japan, Shotetsu Brickinger, and this was released on Neo-Geo CD in 1996, but the cartridge version didn't come out until 2009. Very interesting. We're going to listen to a track called It's an Invasion, Isn't It? Composed by Hiroyuki Takei. Let's hear the cart version first. That was It's an Invasion, Isn't It? From Ironclad / Chitotsu Brickinger. That was released on cartridge format in 2009. Great track. Starts off kind of slow, very cool sounding. Reminded me a lot of the soundtrack to Shadowrun on the Super Nintendo. And then bursts into this really, really rockin' full force onslaught of like synth guitars and bass. So I wonder how they handled that on the CD arrangement, which came out 15 years earlier. Let's check it out. Man, I think the CD version really killed it. It's an invasion, isn't it? From Ironclad / Chitotsu Brickinger on the Neo-Geo CD, released in 1996, composed and arranged by Hiroyuki Takai. Holy cow. First of all, I just want to say, I played this one first on the Neo-Geo CD, and went to go look up the soundtrack, and at the time I thought that it had only been released on Neo Geo CD and it was just an exclusive and there was no cart release for this game whatsoever. And I found the soundtrack on YouTube because I wanted to see if there were actual track names so I can include them in the show notes. I listened to this song and I was like, oh, this is really good. I'm going to have to put this in the show. And then when I went to look at the CD on my computer to look through the soundtrack on it, I found this song, but it did not sound the same at all. It was literally like the first song and the second song. So I was like, why are there two different versions if there was only one version of this game? I did a little more research on it, and I found out that this game was originally supposed to have been released on Neo Geo Kart, but never got put out. However, the cartridge version of the soundtrack was put out on a retail soundtrack CD in Japan at the same time that the Neo Geo CD version of the game was put out. So, Japanese gamers had access to both versions of the soundtrack. US gamers could only play the Neo Geo CD version, or they had to, know about the Japanese cart version of the soundtrack and import the CD. The game sat on SNK's shelves, or Saurus, who was the developer of the game, sat on their shelves until 2009, when the game finally came out in cartridge format for the Virtual Console on the Wii in both the US and Japan. So it's absolutely crazy that it took that long for this game to come out in cartridge format, when all up until then this was just a Neo Geo CD exclusive. It's really funny, and so people have extracted the Neo Geo ROM out of the Virtual Console image, and there are Neo Geo flash carts out there, so you can actually play this in a Neo Geo cart format if you want to, or like me, if you have a Neo Geo CD, you can grab an image of the CD and play the CD version with the CD soundtrack. So very, very weird kind of a story. I don't know why the original version never got released. I mean, 1996 was a little bit later in the Neo Geo CD's life, but games were coming out for the Neo Geo up till the 2000s, so I'm not sure why this one never saw the light of day. It's a fun game. It's a non-linear shmup, but it takes place in 2.5D perspective. So if you think about the perspective in most beat-em-ups, like Final Fight, for instance, zoom it way out, and then stick spaceships on there instead of people walking around. That's pretty much what this game feels like. I mean, it feels like a horizontal shmup, and you're moving up and down to dodge bullets, and you can move back and forth as well. But in game perspective, you're kind of sliding back and forth in this 2.5D perspective. It's cool. It's a unique way to play a game, and it makes the levels look very interesting and dynamic. They used digitized sprites for this game, so it's got a very kind of Donkey Kong Country look, but for some reason they used very little color, so a lot of the backgrounds are just like 3 or 4 tones of green, and then you get to a different area and it's like 3 or 4 tones of brown. It doesn't make too much sense. I don't know why, if they were just trying to save on memory, or they knew it was coming out on CD only and they wanted to kind of free up some color RAM, or I have no idea. The game looks kind of weird in that perspective, but the enemies themselves are very colorful, very well animated. They all have dialogue. The bosses will come out and they'll shout things at you. There's 3 different ships you can choose from, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses. One's faster but weaker, and the other one's slower but stronger, and then there's one that's kind of in the middle. You have a little option style thing from similar to R-Type, where you can use it to slam into enemies. It can absorb bullets, and you can use it as a kind of like a shield in front of your ship if you want to detach it from yourself, and then it'll shoot bullets straight up and down, so it'll catch enemies on their way towards you. And the levels are set up kind of like Darius or, I don't know, like Outrun, something like that, where you have a tree. So when you beat a level, you can choose to go up one or down one. And as you go through this kind of diamond tree, you can kind of make your way up and down, kind of zigzag your way across from left to right. And different points on the map are different endings that you can get for the game with a different giant end boss. So there's a lot of replayability here. I think there are probably, by my estimation, 5 or 6 different endings that you can get, and different difficulty levels as well. So you can experiment with taking different routes through the game and seeing what the story shapes up to be as you go through it. Really good soundtrack. Hiroyuki Takai, not too many games to his name. He did sound arrangement for Samurai Showdown in 1994, Stakes Winner 2 in 1996, followed up by Ironclad. The Irritating Maze, which was another fun Neo Geo game. His last game was in 2002. He was credited for Inuyasha, a feudal fairy tale. But I really like this soundtrack. It's got a very kind of 80s meets 90s feel to it. I think I like the CD version a little bit more. It feels like the cart version is a little crunchier, but he had to make sacrifices with his music when he sequenced it for the Neo Geo sound chip. Your opinion may vary, and that's totally cool. We're going to listen to a song next that only has a CD version, and I'll explain a little bit why after we listen to it. So we're going to listen to Katakis Dark Seed from Last Hope, which is another horizontal shmup for the Neo Geo CD. This one is composed by Raphael Deal. This was released in 2006, and that's because this is a NG Dev Team game, which is technically unlicensed for the Neo Geo system. We'll be right back. right, that was Katakis Dark Seed from Last Hope, composed by Raphael Deal, and came out in 2006 on the Neo-Geo CD. It also came out on the traditional cart-based console and the Dreamcast as well. This was from NG Dev Team, which is a kind of an indie German developer that makes games for Neo Geo, Dreamcast, Neo Geo CD, some other systems, and releases games in very limited quantities. So I believe there was only 500 Neo Geo CD versions made, and there were only 60 Neo Geo cartridges made of this game, and they sold for about $700 a piece, believe it or not. So yeah, if you can get your hands on a cartridge version, you have yourself a nice little collector's item there. But this is an absolutely gorgeous piece of music and a gorgeous soundtrack. I appreciate so much the calmness of this track, even though it's shoot 'em up, which is normally a very frantic kind of game. The beat is just so aesthetically pleasing to me, and the calming bell tones of the synths just kind of wash over me. It doesn't feel like VGM to me. It feels more like something you might hear on like a relaxation tape or something like that. It really is the kind of music that I could play when I want to fall asleep or decompress after a rough day at work or something. Raphael Deal's been composing a lot of music for NG Dev Team. He himself is also a German composer. He is very influenced by Chris Hulsbeck, who is the composer of Turrican, Jim Power, a lot of other Amiga, Commodore 64 games, and NG Dev Team's game Gunlord, which is kind of a tribute to the Turrican series. Raphael Deal's soundtrack sounds very, very Turrican-esque. I think we played a track or two from that on Pixel Tunes Radio way back in the day. I have mixed feelings about this game. It is extremely difficult, very much the same as Last Resort. It loves to back you into corners, and it forces you to really memorize your way through each level. And I'm more of a reflex-based gamer, so if you're the type of player that likes to play levels over and over again, you will eventually beat this game, but I have not even come close. The story behind this game is very interesting, because originally the cart version came out and it got okay reviews. I mean, people praised it because the game looks just as gorgeous as the music is, but it's also very difficult. And one of their main complaints was that the bullets were the same colors as the backgrounds and the enemies in places, so the bullets that were being shot at you were very difficult to see. The Neo-Geo CD version had pink bullets. They were bright pink bullets, much easier to see, and so that version got much better reviews. The NG Dev Team, 5 years later, in 2011, released a second run of Neo Geo kart games called Last Hope Pink Bullets, which was an edit of the original game, which included pink bullets. They also released the same thing for the Dreamcast in 2009. So there are two different versions of the Dreamcast and the Neo Geo Kart version of this game floating around, one with pink bullets, one without, and of course the Neo Geo CD game has stayed the same because it was perfect as it was. This also, it kind of similar to, I guess, Polestar or a couple of other Neo Geo games from the earlier era, has rendered graphics, like I said, with Ironclad, kind of similar to the way they did Donkey Kong Country. This is much more colorful and much better animated. Ironclad felt a little bit lazy when it came to that stuff, but this one is a really, really solid feeling game. And if you can find yourself a copy, which is nearly impossible, you won't be disappointed with it at all. especially if you like shoot 'em ups, especially if you like games like R-Type, etc., etc. So NG Dev Team has some really cool games out, very technically impressive, especially for amateur developed games for older defunct systems, and I don't think you'll go wrong with Last Hope if you're into that kind of stuff. I didn't play the cart version soundtrack because all they did for the cart version was take the CD soundtrack, compress it kind of MP3 style, and played it through the high quality sample channel. So it's compressed, it's mono instead of stereo. You wouldn't really gain anything by listening to basically the same music, just sounding like somebody's playing it over the phone and you're holding the phone up to your ear to listen to it. That's basically what it sounds like. So, and of course the Dreamcast version had an identical soundtrack to the Neo-Geo CD version, full CD quality stereo audio. All right, we're going to move on to the last two games of our show, and we're going to take it down a notch. We're going to listen to some golf soundtracks. So we're going to start off with a launch title for the Neo Geo called Top Players Golf. This came out on cartridge originally in 1991 and CD in 1994. This is a track called Cool Wind from an unknown composer. Start off with the cart version as usual. We'll be right back. That was Cool Wind from the cartridge version of Top Players Golf for the Neo Geo. Reminds me of something you might hear on KVGM, or something Josh might have played on the VGM jukebox. Very smooth, very calming, and I'm really excited to play the Neo Geo CD version because I feel the arrangement really does this song justice. So let's take a listen to the 1994 Neo Geo CD arrangement of Cool Wind from Top Players Golf. See, that really does that song justice. Nice, smooth rhythms, very cool little saxophone solo, and still stays very true to the original 1991 soundtrack. That was Cool Wind for the Neo-Geo CD from Top Players Golf. Unfortunately, this game blows chunks. No, it's really bad. I guess... I mean, while technically kind of impressive, it feels more like a Genesis game with some scaling and rotation built in and some, like, larger than usual sprites, but whoever made the game just didn't really understand the information that a golfer needs when playing a golf video game. So you don't really have a good bead on how close you are to the pin versus how many yards you can drive with your particular selected club. So like you don't know what power to pick, and you can select between a full course view and the view from behind your golfer, but none of it really gives you enough information of your layout to really kind of make an accurate shot. And so it becomes very, very difficult to play this game. I played, I think, 9 holes and just did an abysmal job because I literally couldn't figure out what the heck I was doing. And I'm not a bad video game golfer. I've been playing video game golf since I was a little kid. This one was, not great. For a Neo Geo launch title, hey, I mean, maybe it was some dev team's first foray into programming for this system, and if that's the case, then sure. This is one of the cheapest Neo Geo cartridges. I think you can have it for under $200, and that is an absolute steal for a Neo Geo cart. Unfortunately, when all is said and done, then you have Top Players Golf to play that you've just spent a couple $100s on, and it's not worth that much money at all. The CD version is nice because it comes with a great soundtrack. You can get this for probably about $15 on eBay if you want, so it's about the price of a regular like retail audio CD, so you can buy it just for the smooth, cool golf jams from Mr. or Mrs. Unknown. I don't have much else to say about Top Players Golf other than probably a good idea to avoid it. And if you're looking for a good golf game on the Neo Geo CD, check out my next pick. So we're going to listen to Fujiyama Oriental Golf Club Japan from one of my favorite games, Neo Turf Masters. This was released on the Neo Geo and the Neo Geo CD, both in 1996, composed by one of my favorite composers, Takushi Hayamura. We'll listen to the card version first and be right back. Oh man, Fujiyama Oriental Golf Club Japan from Neo Turf Masters, composed by Takushi Hayamura. That was the cartridge version of the soundtrack. It is no surprise that this is a crowd favorite amongst golf VGM fans. I guess the major question here is, did they do it justice on the CD arrangement? Well, I'll let you decide for yourself. Let's take a listen. Welp, I guess if it ain't broke, don't fix it. You know what I mean? That was Fujiyama Oriental Golf Club, Japan, from Neo Turf Masters, from the Neo-Geo CD, composed by Takushi Hayamuda. And yeah, I mean, he didn't change much for the CD arrangement. This might have actually been the original version that he wrote and then was sequenced for the chip. I'm not sure. I feel like there are a lot of similarities. I think the most difference between the two is maybe that guitar sample towards the end, where I actually prefer the guitar on the cart version of the song a little more. It sounds a little more in tune, on key, a little smoother. It sounds a little kind of, I don't know, off the wall on the CD arrangement. But the bass on the CD arrangement is just absolutely incredible. I mean, it was a funky friggin' bass line to begin with, and just the richness and the sharpness of the CD version really, really make it stand out. It's hard to believe that this is the same guy that wrote the incredible New Jack Swing jams on Undercover Cops and Super R-Type on the Super Nintendo. But then when you listen to that bass, you're kind of like, all right, I can definitely hear it. It's still got that swing that those soundtracks did. It's, got several different movements to it. It's just a very kind of positive, uplifting, makes you just want to keep playing golf kind of track. This entire soundtrack is amazing. My favorite is actually the USA track, but I didn't like the CD arrangement as much for that, and I really like the CD arrangement for the Japan course, so I wanted to throw this one in. Plus, like I said, it's kind of the crowd favorite for the entire soundtrack on a whole. The game is a fantastic golf game. It's got amazing graphics. Anything that was wrong with Top Players Golf, they totally fixed. It's got a very easy to use interface. It's very easy to tell where you are, how far you can shoot, what direction you're shooting in, how well the layout of the course is very well done. The graphics show you very easily what's a slope, what's an incline, what's a decline. So really fun to play. I'd say it's very easy to learn and difficult to master, because if you screw up and you end up in a heavy rough or even the rough, it becomes very difficult to accurately get your ball out of it and get back into the groove for that hole. So I was chugging along a couple days ago, 2-3 under par, and then just had one bad hole and completely destroyed my entire game, which happens to PGA pros all the time. You just get stuck in a rut and you cannot get out of it. So I feel like this game really kind of brings some realism in terms of the psychology behind the game to the Neo Geo. That said, Nazca developed this game and they later on became a part of SNK. I guess SNK was so impressed with the quality of their games that they decided to fold them in. If you want to hear more about the cart version of Neo Turf Masters soundtrack, you can listen to Pixelated Audio episode 69, which focuses on Neo Turf Masters, both the cartridge version and the port that was made for the Neo Geo Pocket Color. And they actually have Takushi Hayamura on as a guest, and they interview him about his music and his soundtrack and the tools that he used to compose it, which was a fantastic listen. I really, really liked listening to this one. So that being said, that pretty much wraps it up for the music. I hope you guys maybe have a new appreciation for the coolness of the Neo-Geo CD, that it's not just some like, well, okay, it is kind of like a wannabe Neo-Geo system, but there's a lot of really good arrangements of Neo-Geo soundtracks that you can listen to. This is only kind of the tip of the iceberg. There are a ton of different games out there with rearranged soundtracks, some good, some bad. You know, I picked kind of the cream of the crop here, but the fighting games have fantastic soundtracks with live instrumentation. There are some racing games out there that have really, really rockin', very good, like live rock soundtracks. So there's a lot to look at, and there are a lot of soundtracks on YouTube. If you just pull up Neo Geo CD soundtracks, I'm sure you'll find a ton. Or ask me, and I can point you in the right direction for some really cool Neo Geo CD music. I've got to get a capture card. I would love to start doing some streaming. You know, it'd be really cool to kind of show off some Neo Geo CD games and kind of pump the soundtracks up so you guys can kind of listen as I play along with it. So, you know, maybe with some Patreon money, I'll eventually have enough to buy a cool capture card and start doing some Twitch streams or some Discord streams, whatever we want to do. I've been thinking more and more about that, especially since I've been spending so much time at home lately. Speaking of Patreon, I'd love to thank our Patreon patrons for supporting the show. I think it should be out by now, but I want to thank everyone who contributed to the last Embassy exclusive. So kind of a double hit here. Our good friend Joe, who is currently battling cancer, obviously can't come out in a pandemic for a recording, and people can't come over the house anyway, and so me and Todd and Joe are kind of all sitting Embassy exclusive out for a little while. So I released Embassy exclusive as a public show for everybody, and I kind of crowdsourced a whole bunch of hopeful, uplifting tunes. So for people like me who maybe aren't handling the whole quarantine situation so well, maybe it'll be a nice playlist of cool and uplifting music to listen to. You can find it on the VG Embassy traditional podcast feed, or you can also head over to patreon.com/the VG Embassy, and it will be a public post where you can download the public Embassy exclusive show full of lots of really cool testimonials and words of encouragement from the VG Embassy community, which really warmed my heart. It was a really cool show, and I really appreciate everybody who contributed stuff to it. A lot of those patrons will be listed here at our Taurus level. Cameron Childs, aka Bruce Irons of the Mad Gear Band, Michael Bridgewater from Forever Sound Version, Donovan Orofino, and Chris Murray. Our VG emissaries, Chris Myers, John Jekyll, aka Mixix Master, Ben the Dyad Dishman from the Dyad Presents, a VGM podcast, Chris Steenerson from the VG Jam podcast, Jordan Worma from the Table to Stage podcast, David Parrish, and Bedroth from VGM, the Very Good Music podcast. Our audio attaché members, Cameron Worma, Carlos from the Heroes 3 podcast, Scott McElhone, and Dan Lawton. Our special agents, Volt Supreme from Volt Supreme's Dream Stream VGM machine. I always get that wrong. It's something very similar to that. Muddle Madness, aka Daniel Perney, and Ryan Steele. And of course, our VG ambassador, the patron saint of VGM podcasts, Alex, the Messenger from The Messenger Presents, a VGM Journey podcast. As always, you can find us on facebook.com/groups/the VG Embassy, on Twitter at the VG Embassy, and head over to our website, thevgembassy.com, and you will see a link for our Discord group where you can join and talk to a ton of like-minded people about video games, video game music, all sorts of cool stuff. Super great group over on the Discord. Those are my peeps. Anyways, that was a fun show. I'm tired of talking. I'm ready for bed, so I will leave you and say adieu. I will see you in 2 weeks with another awesome episode of the VG Embassy. Peace out, everyone.